Hello BookTube, this is part 8 of my 2022 library tour. Today I'll be finishing up the headboard bookcase, the lower shelf. This one's going to be a bit because there are a lot of books on here, an assorted array of canonical works, classics, and genre fiction, as well as some drama. So let's get going. First of all is The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. This is one of the earliest detective novels. It's the story of an English country house and its serving staff, as well as some visitors who are celebrating the young daughter of the family's upcoming birthday. As part of her birthday celebration, she's receiving as an inheritance a stolen, pilfered diamond that ne'er-do-well uncle got from India. During the party, the stone is stolen, and a lot of the first-person narratives that make up this novel sort of reflect on trying to figure out who ultimately stole the diamond, and also various other subplots. It's been a while since I've read this novel. I first read it when I was in middle school, because I think I checked it out of the library when I was in 8th grade. And really enjoyed it, and I've read it a few times since, although it is well past due for a reread, I think. And I picked this copy up from Golden's Book Exchange, which will make a few other appearances in this section, part of the library tour. Next up is The Night Manager by John Mccorray. This is one of Mccorray's 90s novels. It's about a night manager at a hotel who is recruited by British intelligence to infiltrate a gun-running operation who's passing weapons to Colombian drug cartels. I tried this novel a few years ago, not this edition. I checked out from the library, and I kind of didn't quite finish it, and I really wanted to have another go at it ever since, and I picked up this edition. I don't know if I picked it up from Golden's or the free section of my library, or the little book sale section of my library. I might have gotten it from there. Okay, so trying to put these books back might be a bit of an issue. Next is Agatha Christie. This is Peril at End House. This book I got by mistake. I initially wanted the 5 complete novels of murder and detection, which has Peril at End House as one of the books. But the seller I bought it from, I guess, didn't have that edition, or lied about having that edition or something, and instead sent just this little mass market paperback, which annoyed me. I think I did get a refund for it, though, and then I bought that one edition from a different seller a few months later. But I still have this edition, and I really probably ought to send it along somewhere else. I don't know where, though, given the pandemic and everything. Might try to see if I can find the little free library, because supposedly there's one somewhere here in town. And next is The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. This is, of course, a seminal work of French historical fiction. It's about 3 musketeers who are joined by a younger, aspiring musketeer who seek to thwart the schemes of the Cardinal Richelieu. Yeah, I've never quite gotten on with the novel. I tried it once and I didn't get very far, but I have this. I'll probably try it again at some point. Next up are two novels by Ian Fleming, James Bond. This is Dr. No, which I got from the little free library section of my library. Well, it's not free, it's like, I think, 25 cents or 50 cents for a book. Yeah, I kind of enjoy it. It's basically Bond is recovering from the events of From Russia with Love. He's sent to investigate what happened to an agent operating in Jamaica and comes across Dr. No and puts a stop to him. It's really fun. I've read it a few times and it is quite enjoyable. More action oriented than some of the other Bond novels are. Next is Thunderball, again by Ian Fleming. This is the first in the Spectre or Blofeld trilogy. Basically, Spectre, an organized crime outfit, manages to steal a few nuclear weapons and blackmails the world with them. I actually preferred the movie to the book because I think the movie kind of does a bit more with Spectre than the book does. Although I think the Spectre operations in the book are a bit more interesting, or the one at the meeting. So, I kind of would like to have a different editions of those two, though. I'm not really all that fond of that orange. But anyway, next is a book I've had forever, and it looks it. This is The Complete Plays of Christopher Marlowe. It includes, see if I could open this without tearing it to shreds. I am careful with my books, but this is old. So it's got Dido, Queen of Carthage, Tamerlane 1 and 2, Faustus, the Jew of Malta, Edward II, and the Massacre at Paris. I picked this up at the book sale at San Francisco State University in 2006. And I've had it ever since, and it is in pretty beat up shape. I probably ought to, at some point, look into getting another edition of this if I really want to read Plays of Marlowe, because this one's about at it. Whew, that was a bit of a workout. Next is The Picture of Dorian Gray and Other Writings by Oscar Wilde. I picked this up from Book People ages ago. I've read some of the stories in here. I think I never read Salome, and I think maybe Lady Windermere's Fan. And I've had a few goes at The Picture of Dorian Gray, although I wish I still had the novel, the Picture of Dorian Gray as a standalone novel, because the edition I had was really good. It was like a marble torso that I thought was really striking. Next is another novel by Agatha Christie. This is Hickory, Dickory, Dock. This is one of my favorite Poirot novels, although not necessarily one of the strongest Poirot novels. This is from the 50s, and it's about a Poirot investigating the goings-on at a student hostel, whose matron is the sister of Poirot's secretary, Miss Lemon. Basically, there's a bunch of petty thieving, things going missing, and all of this petty thievery is a cover for something far more sinister that results in a number of murders, as Agatha Christie novels usually do. I really enjoy this novel. I think perhaps on the strength of the... well, I don't know. I think I actually read the novel before I saw the adaptation. Because I think the adaptation came out in the late 90s, and I think I read it before then, but I really enjoyed it, and I've read it a few times since, and I always really enjoy it. It's been a while since I've read it, though. Next is a novel that I'm not entirely sure what I make of. I mean, I haven't read it. I've seen one of the adaptations, the animated one, and I really want to read or watch the Netflix one. This is Watership Down by Richard Adams. This is a story of rabbits moving from one burrow to another, and the adventure that entails. Never read it. I really should. I picked this up from the free library at or I keep saying free library, and it's not free. It's the book sale nook at the library I go to, or I went to. It's been about 2 years since I've actually gone there. Next is the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket by Edgar Allan Poe. I picked this up for a class I took on 19th century American fiction, and really enjoyed it. This is a weird adventure novel. It's weird, but enjoyable. But again, weird. It's been forever since I've read it. I really ought to have another go at it. Next is Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll in a Norton Critical Edition. This includes Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, The Hunting of the Snark, and obviously the critical apparatus that comes at the back of a Norton Critical Edition. It's been forever since I read the Alice books, and I really ought to. I really enjoy them. And I picked this up for, I think, a Victorian Lit class at San Francisco State. Well, the less said about that, the better. Anyway. Next is another work of French historical fiction, although I'm not entirely sure if the author himself is French. Yes, he was. Yes, it is. This is The Iron King. Obviously, this is one of the books that inspired George R. R. Martin when he wrote A Song of Ice and Fire. I can't say much about it because I've never read it. I think I picked it up from Golden's, and I think it was put in the fantasy section, science fiction fantasy section, I want to say. Next is Lady Audley's Secret by Mary Elizabeth Braden. This is, again, an early example of detective fiction or thriller fiction. It's a story of a young man who investigates his new, it's not his stepmother, it's like an aunt or something, and discovers that she has a secret. yeah, I mean, I've seen the film or the miniseries adaptation of this, and I read this and ages ago, and I think only the one reading is enough. I'm not a huge fan of this book. It actually infuriates me quite a bit. It's one of those things where the sort of the intended reaction to the story is dated, because obviously if you're reading it now, or even probably from the mid 20th century, you're not going to be as sympathetic to what happens or to why the main character does what he does. It's just as simple as that. Next up is Boycam by Sam Stevens. This is a work of gay erotica or gay literary porn. Well, not literary at all. This is basically the gay porn version of Big Brother. A gay-themed network basically is looking for a new show and hit upon the idea of a bunch of hot gay guys in a house together, and they're slowly whittled down to one, as in Big Brother, and a lot of sex happens. It's not particularly well written or anything. I've had that book for ages, because I got it for like my 18th birthday. Next up is a book by the same author that I've never read, but I've always kind of wanted, even though it is likely not very well written. This is a boy band, again by Sam Stevens. This is basically, members of a boy band are gay and they have lots of sex. Next is another book by Agatha Christie. This is And Then There Were None. I picked this up from Golden's Book Exchange. This is probably one of Agatha Christie's greatest novels. If you would make a list, I would say this is top 5, if not number 1. A bunch of people are invited to an island by a mysterious host, and all of these people have secrets. They are all guilty of murder and have gotten away with it. And slowly, one by one, they all are killed. Again, like a lot of the Agatha Christie novels I had this in paperback 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and really enjoyed it, and I wanted it ever since. And I would go to Golden's Book Exchange, and I could never find it. I've always had a bit of an issue trying to find the detective fiction section of Golden's. I mean, eventually one day I did find it, but surprisingly there aren't a whole lot of Agatha Christie novels there. Golden's is really good at genre fiction, particularly romance. I mean, there's like 2 whole rooms worth of romance. I think Steve Donahue would probably have a field day there. Oh, I probably ought to move Agatha Christie because she's sandwiched between gay porn. Next up is Brad by Ken Smith. This book is, again, gay erotica. It's about a young man who is initially lives on a farm or in a rural area, has lots of sex, and then joins the Navy and has lots of sex as a hustler. Not terribly well written. The 2 halves of the novel probably could have been 2 completely separate things, because I've never quite I don't quite buy Brad wanting to join the Navy. It's just like the author's fetish or something. Next is The Moon's Deep Circle by David Hawley. Again, this is gay erotica. It's about a young man named Tip who is a swimmer at in Oregon. His two older brothers have mysteriously disappeared, and one day he manages to break into their room and finds his oldest brother's journal, where he discovers said older brother was a member of a neo-pagan group composed of gay men who had a lot of sex. And inspired by this journal, he and a number of his friends kind of start having a lot of sex. I think it's okay. I think if you could kind of get away from the neo-pagan stuff, which is about outdated, particularly since one of the characters is a scholar of that, which should probably know better. But anyway, yeah. So next up is another Agatha Christie novel. This is Sleeping Murder. So far, the only Miss Marple novel I have yet to find in an omnibus edition. This is the last Miss Marple novel. It was originally written in the 40s, and Agatha Christie put it in a safety deposit box in case she died during World War II, although she didn't, so it was released posthumously, I think. This is the story of some friends of Miss Marple's nephew, Raymond West, who New Zealand, basically a newly married couple. The wife is from New Zealand, but was born and lived the first few years of her life in the United Kingdom. And there's this house they pass by that she wants to live in. It's for sale. And she can remember having lived there before. And that kind of unspools a decades-old mystery, which includes, of course, murder. Although in this case, I think there's only the one murder. But I could be wrong. It's been a few years since I read it. Next is a children's classic. This is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. I've never read it, but I've, of course, seen the film adaptation numerous times. And then we have The Neverending Story by Michael Ende. Again, this is a seminal work of children's literature. Had a wonderful film adaptation in the early 80s, although the author, Michael Ende, disowned it. I read this, I finally read the whole of it in 2020 as part of, there's a German reading event going on, and this was one of the books I picked for that. It's quite good, although I thought maybe a little bit, didn't have enough complications, I thought. And I think the first part of the book is definitely a lot stronger than the second half. But anyway, maybe when I have another go at it, I'll change my mind. Next up is A Portable Dante. This is a small omnibus of Dante Alighieri's work. Let's see who's all in here. So it's got the Divine Comedy, La Vita Nuova, the Rhymes, Latin prose works. Yeah. now we're getting into some Penguin classics. And one of the biggest books I own, this is The Fairy Queen by Edmund Spenser. I read the first canto for a Renaissance literature class and loved it and wanted the whole of The Fairy Queen, so I eventually bought this complete edition. Another massive work of Renaissance or near-Renaissance literature. This is Le Morte d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory. This is a massive working of the Arthurian legends. It's fantastic. It's been far too long since I've read it. I really need to make the effort to reread this. Also need to go at The Fairy Queen too, at some point. Sticking with King Arthur, this is the Arthurian Romances by Coretti and Detrois. I picked this up from Golden's Book Exchange ages ago. Haven't had a chance to go at it yet. I think I picked up Le Morte d'Arthur and The Fairy Queen from Barnes & Noble. Could be wrong about that, though. Returning to drama, this is The Duchess of Malfi and Other Plays by John Webster. I picked this up for a that Renaissance literature class. We read The Duchess of Malfi and White Devil, and I really enjoyed them. Those were fantastic. But I've never read The Devil's Law Case or Cure for a Cuckold. And now we get to the classics, the literature of Greece and Rome. First up is Hesiod, translated by Richard Lattimore. This is a little omnibus that includes the Works and Days, the Theogony, and the Shield of Heracles. And then I have The Voyage of the Argo by Apollonius of Rhodes. This is the story of Jason and the Argonauts. I picked up the Hesiod and the Voyage of the Argo from the little book sale section at St. Edward, at San Francisco State University. When I was briefly there as a graduate student, there was a little used bookstore or bookstore room in one of the academic buildings. Not the literature or the English department, but I think it was like the history, geography part or something. Next is the Orestaya by Ischalis. This includes Agamemnon, the Baetian bearers, and the Eumenides. It's basically the story of the death of Agamemnon and Orestes taking justice against his mother, and then the trial of Orestes for the murder of Clytemnestra. Picked this up from Barnes & Noble ages ago. And then we finally get to the Iliad by Homer. Again, I picked this up for a Greek mythology class after having the Richard Burton prose translation from Barnes & Noble editions. But this is, again, much better than that. Let's get you back in here. Then I have some more Greek drama. This little omnibus includes, or anthology, includes, edited by Moses Haddis, includes Agamemnon, the summary of Koiphoroi, I butchered that, the Eumenides. From Sophocles, it includes Antigone, Oedipus the King, the summary of Oedipus at Colonus, and Philoctete. From Euripides, Medea, Hippolytus, and the Trojan Women. From Aristophanes, Frogs, and that's that. Picked it up from a little thrift store on Congress, which I'm almost certain is no longer there in Austin. Because at the time, and I'm pretty sure the stores on Congress still do this, there was a first Thursday or a third Thursday, where like a Thursday in every month, the stores would be open later, there would be sales on, there'd be a bit of a festive atmosphere, and people would go and shop and stuff. And it took me a while to finally get involved, and one of the places we went was a thrift store that was on Congress. I think it was, could have been St. Vincent de Paul, but that could have been something else. Because I've encountered a lot of things with de Paul in the name. But anyway, so I went from the book section, because always, if I'm doing something like that, I'm always looking for the books. I'm all about the books. But anyway, moving on, this is the Histories of Herodotus. I picked this up from Golden's ages ago. Need to get to it. Also a pickup from Golden's. This is The Lives of the Caesars by Suetonius. And then I have Sappho, translated by Mary Bernard. These are okay. It's been a while since I've read them. So, I mean, it's an okay translation. And then I have two books that collect the Greek myths. This is The Greek Myths in a Complete Edition, edited by Robert Graves. It's really good. I mean, it's comprehensive, although you do have to be aware that Robert Graves he has opinions about Greek mythology, and he pretty much refashions the myths to sort of coincide with his theories about Greek mythology. And they're rather interesting. I mean, you need to kind of be aware that Robert Graves this is pretty much the Greek myths Robert Graves edition. I also have Mythos by Stephen Fry. I picked this up from Book Depository. I think it was one of the first books from Book Depository I picked up, and this is a really interesting book. I love Fry's retellings. They are phenomenal. I really need to reread this, and I really need to get the rest of the series. There's, I think, like 3 books in the series, and I've only got 1. And finally, I have one of the oldest books in my collection, and that it's from like the 1920s. This is an omnibus edition of the works of H. Rider Haggard. This I picked up from Golden's Book Exchange when I was looking for some works by Haggard. I really enjoy some of his work. There's Cleopatra, which I've never read. Then there's King Solomon's Mines are in here, Allan Quatermain, and She. And I had an omnibus of She, King Solomon's Mines, and Allan Quatermain for a while, and ended up getting rid of it. It was from Dover. It was really nice. And it took me forever to find like an edition that had She, King Solomon's Mines, and Allan Quatermain. I have it, and I'm quite happy. So that wraps up part 8 of my library tour. Tomorrow we will be moving to the modern and contemporary fiction section. And so until then, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.